now that I look back on where I am in life and what I'm doing music, I always have these really, really early memories. Like I remember even in grade one, there would just be like songs that would come on, or anytime we were singing, and they were just always in my head. And I even remember me and my buddy Joe, like we would even try singing. I remember doing like harmonies with him early on. Like we did like from The Lion King. I remember like trying to sing like a Timon and Pumbaa like part, and we both like got the harmonies. It was like grade one, and I remember just always really liking music, but I was very embarrassed about liking music for whatever reason. I always felt really weird about just liking music. It took years until I was probably grade eight or grade nine, getting Big Shiny Tunes. That was probably the first really cool CD I
Classic.
got. And I felt like, okay, now I feel like I can just, the world is my oyster. I can explore any kind of music. And yeah, so I don't know. It was always played a big role in my head. And I'm only now realizing this.
This is like little tidbits of like, of getting into music at like a very early age and things that spawned like, oh, I like the way this sounds, even into like, your later elementary school years where you're like, I really like music. And now I'm identifying myself as this type of person, this kind of style. And that even evolves. And you know what I mean? I think even some of my earliest memories were just, and for whatever reason, I don't know what it is. I love, like I'm born in the 80s. You know what I mean? I grew up in the 90s. I love like 90s alternative. I love like Weezer, Green Day, Deftones, stuff like that growing up. But like for any songs that I felt like kind of got me into music, I'm always referring back to like 50s style like songs. I don't know what, like whether it was watching La Bamba and get my mind blown at a young age, or like, waking up. I remember just, when you have those kind of dreams where you kind of wake up in the morning and, things are playing or conversations are happening around you. And I remember hearing like Runaway on the radio, or like the Jerry and the Pacemakers, like album that my dad used to have, the record, that I used to walk down my hallway and see this Jerry and the Pacemakers like record and be like, who are these geeks? Only to realize they're like the best freaking band in the world. And then like, little memories like that. And then also, I remember the first time it really got me into being like a performer and being like, I want this glory, the way like a soccer player like gets a stadium going or something is I remember just seeing, I was young in grade five, and I remember seeing like, Italo Lombardi, this guy like 3 years older than me, doing the lip sync talent show. He had the long hair. He brought his electric guitar. I thought to myself, this guy's the fucking coolest person I've ever seen in my life at this moment right now. He was just like ripping it up and like just lip sync, just like the fact of him being on stage. You know what I mean? And that kind of spawned me wanting to do like, my own little lip sync talent shows in front of my grade six class. My teacher really embraced that and let me do it. And then, and then later on in high school, now like, okay, now I can actually plug in and actually play some, guitar or drums or something. And then having that all kind of go. And I think it's all these experiences growing up that just made me feel like I just want to, why I love being in music right now to this day.
And we always ask each other, like, we're like, what made us want to get in front of people at such a young age? Like what, and you probably have the same thing because you're a performer as well. Like what makes us want to get in front of people and be like, look at me. And I'm kind of a shy guy, but when you're put in some kind of spotlight, it's like the time and place. I feel like I can rise to that occasion. But we were even talking about early days, like he had his grade six thing too. I remember in grade six, we had to pick like an artist to perform lip sync in front of the class. And I remember the only stuff I knew was also the 50, 60 stuff. So I remember I did Buddy Holly, and I remember I had 2 cassettes I had to copy and make this little mixtape. And I remember like I bought the glasses and I drew a guitar on big construction paper, and I had this thing and I was like singing like Peggy Sue and like all this stuff to my class. Everyone was doing like Backstreet Boys and everything, and I came in here like just all Buddy Holly, and they liked it so much. I remember I had to do it later. I got an encore to do it in French class. I was all nervous.
I did the portable tour myself. They just sent me going class to class.
Do you think that is where the props and the awesome stage show for the Dreamboats come from? Is you making a guitar and getting good feedback, and you're like, oh, like we can do a step above just playing your instrument and singing. Like we can actually bring a spectacle to this.
Sure.
To me, the Dreamboats is like a different, like it's a shameless vibe in a way. I've been in many different bands, and I've been in a band since I was 17, like solid nonstop in a band since I was 17 years old. Like from 17 to now, I've always been in a band, which is really crazy when I think about it, because I'm not that young anymore. And just like the thing about the Dreamboats and compared to other bands is with other bands, I feel like we always had to kind of like put on this perception of being like cool and a rock band, or you know, the Dreamboats is like, I feel like the more idiotic you act, especially on stage, is what makes this thing go over so well.
Yeah.
And just being like
Shameless.
totally shamelessly, like, I say idiotic, but at the same time, I'm just being like humorous, like having this fun element. And I feel like, you know, I've been in situations in bands where, you know, it's hard to get guys to dance or feel like they can be comfortable to go to the stage. And to me, you don't even have to know how to dance to like retro rock and roll. You just got to get on the stage and jump, or get on the floor and just jump around. And I feel like that's been our kind of ace in the sleeve when it comes to like our live shows, the fact that we're able to kind of induce like this like shameless fun out of people to come and like check it out and like get into it.
And it ties into our love, our like childhood love of this music. You know what I mean? Which is probably another reason why we'd be kind of so shameless. You feel like a bit of a kid when you're performing in this band. Like Richie said, we've all been in other bands where you got to be cool and you got to be this and that, which is, you know, the way most bands operate. But we're definitely known as just fun, and yeah, you can kind of be as shameless as you want.
Yeah.
Well, that period of time, like the 50s and 60s, the image that the bands and the musicians had was more like, you know, boy next door, good times, like, you know, oh golly, whatever. It came a little later where you had like the Led Zeppelins, where it's like, these people are rock stars, they're bigger and better than you. Like,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that came later where you're too cool for school. So I think you guys, that time period is such a fun and like innocent looking projection of
on the pop side, for sure.
And
yeah.
At the end of the day too, like, you know what I mean? I think half the battle has been trying to make it look easy. A lot of people say like, you know, it's all, you know, it's 50s music. It's 3/4. I'm like, yeah, it's 3/4. But man, like, you know, we're trying to really do our best to kind of bring a good show and put that time into making that happen. And it has translated, thankfully. You know what I mean?
And being entertainers, that's what was so cool about that music back in the day. Not that people aren't entertainers now, it's just a different kind of thing. You know, like nowadays you're a pop star, you got to know how to dance, you got to know how to do this and that. It's so much more. But back in the day, you know, you had bands playing real instruments and just entertaining. You know, you have to be good on the mic, working with the crowd, making people, you know, laugh or joking around and having and you know, and just looking like you're having fun and being a showman. So you know, we really try to do that, because this is easy, quote unquote, music in many ways, but you'd be surprised at how many people can't play it how it should be and take it to the next level of making it entertaining and fun.
I think it looks easy when it's done well, which is what you guys are doing, right? Like if it's not done well, then it doesn't look easy. And I think the next time someone says, "Oh, what you're doing is easy," ask them to get up and do a handstand and have another band member play drums on his foot, you know, see who else can do that.
That translates 10 times more than the music itself. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just joking. It's just funny when it just goes to show. It's like we can be doing our best to like nail 3-part harmonies. You know what I mean? Like doing like, you know, focusing on the songs, just keeping ourselves in vocal shape and whatever it is. But it's like, it's the entertainment value and like this kind of stuff that's kind of outside the box, and that shameless, like, stupidness of doing a handstand with a cowbell on your foot that like people are just kind of engaging to and kind of saying, okay, this is just this is an element of the stage show. And if you can kind of make your show just moments and moments and moments and just a barrage of this and that, slow, fast, banter, handstands, Justin jumping off the thing, Johnny doing a drum solo, like all these things. I feel like it's just a combination of all these things just kind of tickle your senses in all these different ways. And these are things that we're trying to still to this day, even after we started the band in 2009, you know, the first time we've ever done this, we came down with laryngitis like last week. And I had to call in one of our mentors, Toronto legend, and I don't say that lightly, by the name of Robbie Lane, who came in and did a private party with us. And we just threw a set list. We didn't know any of the songs. He didn't like perform majority of the songs that we do on the set list. We just backed him up. And just hearing this guy just get on the mic and just work it and just like talk to the audience. And I'm like, it's fearless. It's on the moment.
And
it's
Robbie Lane is
stuff.
from that era. For context, he's he's in his 70s. He grew up playing in the Toronto rock and roll scene. So as Richie was saying, backing him up, and I performed with him a few times as well on drums. And he's just like a classic entertainer. He's witty, he's sharp, he's animated, and yeah, like he was saying, it was just a blast to play with him last.
And
weekend.
as you know, like rest in peace, Ronnie Hawkins. He when the band joined Bob Dylan, or when Dylan went electric, Robbie Lane and his disciples went and moved in and started backing up Ronnie Hawkins. So he has the experience from, he joined Ronnie Hawkins' band like when he was 17 years old. So like seeing, like, we can only be so blessed to like be in the company of people that just own it and just know it and have had all this experience, and you're just sitting there like a fly, no matter how long you've been doing it for, and you're like absorbing it. You're like, okay, I need to do that. I need to start doing, this is the hole in my game.
And there's not many people from that era still like performing music. So we're just like sponges. We've met a few people from the original first wave rock and roll era, and just seeing how they operate and are on stage, it's like really inspiring. And we feel like in many ways we have to kind of carry that torch of entertainment value on and off the stage.
When you talk about memories, about creating all these moments and memorable parts within your show, it reminds me, I went to a concert once where it was Maroon 5 and Train, so it was like a double bill. And on one hand, there was Maroon 5 that was like super polished and perfect. Everything was perfect, so it sounded great, it looked great, they have great songs. And then Train was going on after them. And I'm like, okay, like it's hard to follow Maroon 5. They're, one of the biggest bands. And Train wasn't as polished or like heartthrobs or whatever. But what they did was they created like memorable moment after memorable moment, and they stole the show. Like it was one of the best shows I've seen. And I wasn't a huge Train fan. I like some of their songs, but they just, it was just so memorable. There were parts where like you wanted to cry because it was so touching. There were parts where you were laughing and it was ridiculous. And I learned a lot from that one show where if you can do something memorable that people feel and that touches them, that means more than a perfect Celine Dion note or a perfect guitar solo,
If you can treat like almost like, you should look at it as, you can treat like a show almost like a roller coaster with the peaks and valleys and the dips and the climax, you can be doing exactly how long, if Mariah Carey held the most insanely inhuman like note,
that would be the moment.
That'd be the moment, but like you can't do that for the whole show. You know what I'm saying? Or else, so it's just doing your best to kind of get out of the headspace of just like, to me, I feel like just playing the songs and singing them is the easiest part.
And yeah, exactly. And like Chris, Richie here was saying, is like, we try to think of the show. I mean, we've come after years, we're just like, well, after our shows, we get tagged in all these Instagram videos, and we're always getting tagged in the same things. Okay. We do handstand, everyone whips out the phone. We do the high kicks, everyone whips out the phone.
That's actually good feedback when you think about it.
It is. So we think of things now, not often black and white, but we're just like, oh, we got to do this. And like, that's going to get people to want to film us, to spread the word, So we think of, or at least I do, these moments as in moments, what's going to make people pull out the phone and like want to film this? What are they going to tell people when they go home at the end of the night? This band did, backflip, and they did this and they did that. And they had a,
if there's any takeaway, from this, from this conversation, to any bands, either up and coming or even old dogs like us, is just like, man, the quicker you can get on just like understanding the dynamic of your show, the more money you're going to be making, the more, traction you'll be getting. And, with us, like even growing up, we were lucky for the fact that like, Johnny, I called up Johnny one time. Hey, Johnny, we had this book that we always refer to, like the Beatles Bible, we call, that you could play all the songs and sing all the songs. You just open the book. You could follow along with anyone if they had a general idea. Started this band, immediately started doing some open mics. Then after that, we, getting these bookings to play like 3 sets, you know what I mean? In these bars, and like never any vocal training, nor like, I've never led a band at the time too. Johnny was doing a lot of the banter, and, he wasn't even a vocalist at the time. Now he's getting into vocals, and it's just like, you got to go beyond sometimes, like the thought of like, standing and just playing and singing the songs. It's just like, and that's good and that's awesome. But if that's like the highest point of like your show, you know what I mean? Like we're always thinking of what we can do to just go beyond that, and like, and how hard that is, and like being influenced by people you really respect and care about and admire and see, and go see them playing in real time and being like, getting that feeling of what that's giving you and being like, okay, I want people to feel that. So I guess I got to do what he's doing right now or she's doing, so it's always like a work in progress. But for a takeaway, I just hope that someone can focus on the show ASAP.
Yes. And to further that, it's like almost, if you can play and be entertaining without all the bells and whistles, without lights, without anything, like we always pride ourselves on, like, you can throw us in any situation, even if there's no PA, we can just make something happen and bring an entertaining show. And I think, for up and coming bands, you definitely gotta bring something different to the table. And I think a lot of people are missing the live show aspect of really feeling and bringing the energy to their songs.
It's a mental game too. It's just like people want to feel you being comfortable on stage. But if you feel like you're nervous on stage, and I even have my moments too, it becomes like almost painful to watch. So whatever we got to do to get ourselves in like a comfortable zone, whether it's performing nonstop 3-4 days of the week, like we used to back in the day, and just getting done with it. You know what I mean? Like it helps build that perception and that feeling of comfortability online. And a lot of people, I was going to say an example of like the Beatles. The Beatles just think that they're like some overnight success or something that they got on it. So I was like, no, like they were just killing.
They're playing like 8 hours a day,
on uppers, and just like talking shit to the crowds, and just like you're just like, and just being like so engaged and so nuts, and then just like having someone come in there and just helping them kind of focus it all into one thing. It's like it doesn't come easy. You got to put your time into it.
Yeah, with the Beatles, that's basically like the 10,000 hour theory to become a master at anything. And with them, when they're playing, 8 hours a day, 7 days a week for, I guess it was 2 or 3 years, they basically got their 10,000 hours in 3 years, whereas every other band, that was over a 10-year period. So I think that's a big part of what made them as great as they are, is they put in their time and they did it quicker than everyone else.
And even as songwriters, they were writing like immediately, so it just, they got all that practice in on both sides of the band.
So I don't know if all your fans know, but you guys both play multiple instruments. So on stage, one of you's on drums, one's on guitar and vocals, but you guys can both play drums. You guys can both play guitar and bass. How did you guys originally gravitate to those instruments? It's one thing to suddenly be a fan of music and realize that there's something magical about it, but it's something else to actually pick up an instrument and dedicate yourself to it. So any origin stories there for the instruments?
I think it's influenced like parents. When it came to drums, I started off as a drummer.
We're both drummers.
I'm a drummer at heart.
Let's put it that way.
Realistically, I don't play drums as much as I do. My email still is Chris Hummel Drums, at Gmail. So, but at the end of the day, it really just depends on the influence that you have growing up. What is cool to you? To me, growing up, when I saw Trey Cool and Basket Case, you know what I mean, like ripping those
Green Day
30-second note rolls across those toms, I'm like, what the hell is that? And on top of it, my dad was always like he had sticks, and he said he was a drummer growing up, and obviously we lived in an apartment, we didn't have drums, but there was just, I had to earn the drum set in the beginning. I was playing on pills and pots and pans for a solid 1.5 years, 2 years, before my dad was like, okay, I'm going to invest some money into this kid. He wants to like play some drums. So like, those are my earliest memories when it comes to like learning an instrument per se. Westbury kit, we had the same kit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's kind of the same.
Powerful shout out to Westbury. We'll get them as sponsors maybe. Yeah.
One day.
It was kind of weird because being really young, I always secretly wanted a drum kit. And once again, I was very shy, like, even though I may not seem that way, but I was at points of my childhood, and I always wanted a drum kit. And I remember one day my brother came home, and he was like, my brother's 8 years older than me, and he knew I had a bit of a stash of birthday money. I'm Italian, so whenever it was my birthday, he'd get money from the grandparents. I had this little jar with a couple $100, and he was like, hey, do you want to buy a drum kit with me? We'll split it. It was $400, so $200 of me, $200 of his. And I was like, okay. And my parents were like, you're not buying a drum kit. But I was so fired up. I wanted this drum kit because I always dreamed of this, and I never had the courage to ask my parents because I felt like they were going to be like, where did this come from? Like, no, you don't want drums. If they were to tell me you don't want drums, I feel like that would have like crushed my soul. But the fact that my brother brought it up We were like, yes. My parents were like, you're not getting drums. We went out anyways, got these drums. And I remember I couldn't believe that this drum kit was in my basement. I remember going to bed and the next morning waking up and being like, there is a drum kit in my basement. And I just took to it so well. I was self-taught. So there was a big learning curve there. I really didn't know. I still don't know what I'm doing, but
let's be honest. We have no idea what we're doing on our instruments.
But you know, and then over the years, you know, you start playing drums, and it might be a similar case with Richie here. Is that you know, I grew up and I started jamming with people. And then I was like, oh, the bass looks kind of fun. I'm like, and I started listening to bass in songs. And I remember at Pocock at my high school, I asked the teacher, I'm like, can I rent out the bass? And he was like, yeah. So I took this thing home and I just loved it. And then I asked my brother to show me some chords and I picked that up. And you're just always kind of picking. I never took lessons, but there's just always guitars around and you're playing. And then after a while you realize, like, oh yeah, I guess I play guitar, I play bass, you know? And it's funny, the first time I met Richie here for the very first Dreamboat session, he came in with a guitar. I didn't even know the guy really played drums. You know what I mean? And that was kind of the beginning of your guitar journey.
Yeah, yeah.
Say?
Oh, yeah.
It was definitely the first day we kind of met. You were just getting into guitar.
Well, no, I always had my brother had like a Fender Strat that my dad, like for whatever reason, you know what I mean? I'm sure my dad regrets it to this day, is that my dad at the time invested a lot of money and like lessons into my bro, the older bro. And I used to kind of get the short end.
He picked the wrong horse to bet on.
Yeah, he definitely picked the wrong horse on that one. And then eventually my bro just kind of gave up on it. And I'd be playing like Green Day songs, like just knowing the form of power chords. I'm like, okay, if I can fret, you know, the first and the fifth, I'm okay here. And I'll play all these Green Day songs. And then, you know, I liked getting into, you know, old 90s alternative. And at the time, like I said, this Beatles book, we were all working at L&M, me, Bolton, and
the original lineup.
The original lineup. And Johnny was playing with Bolton and Roberto Seixas at the time. And we all just kind of got together and started playing. I always liked singing. I never considered myself a full-blown singer, which is why I had so many vocal issues, you know, growing, like, you know, first starting with the band, because I went from not singing anything like professionally and just singing like 3 sets. I mean, waking up the next morning, couldn't even talk. You know, you'd think a monitor would exist at the time, or I'd know how to at least get a monitor going. But at the end of the day, yeah, like when it comes down to like learning like multiple instruments or whatnot, I just felt like it was just an easy transition. At least play rhythm guitar. I'm not a fancy guitarist. Rhythm guitar, I use almost like my guitar like a prop. And it helped just having some natural rhythm from the guitar. Same thing I can imagine as being a drummer going to the bass. You have some idea of rhythm.
I think drums are a good foundation for music.
Definitely.
I think because you just get a nice sense of rhythm on anything you play.
It's an encouraging instrument. It's just one of those things where you feel like, okay, I'm not going to sound like Neil Peart right off the bat, but like I can play a pattern here and it's cool. And, you know, if we're playing rock and roll, it's even cooler if you know, are not that polished sounding, you know what I mean? There's almost, so it definitely helps with that, you know. It's
funny, and I think even on a couple, not many people know this, but in some of the early days, we played a couple of questionable shows where there was like no one there, and we even just joked around and we switched it up where Richie would play drums and I would go on bass. There's even some shows I couldn't make. There
was times where in the beginning stages of the Dreamboats, we always knew that when it came down with Johnny, that White Cowbell Oklahoma at the time took precedent, and just it was the more established thing. And shout out to those guys too, because I feel like they've inspired me personally when it came to, you know, and also arming Johnny with the contacts of Europe, which allowed us to kind of go over as the Dreamboats and doing that and having like some cool tours over there. But whenever they were touring and had this extensive thing, Johnny would have to bail, and he'd bail. And I'd just kind of be like, well, I'm booking gigs and I need to keep playing. So I just jump on the drums and do the whole 3 sets playing. No rehearsal, just jump on the drums and just play. And it was wicked. And people would give me the compliments. They'd be like, you know, and they'd be like, you did well. I'm like, I've never done this before.
Yeah.
So before I moved, you know, whatever, 12 years ago to Mississauga from Ottawa. When I was in Ottawa, I knew of White Cowbell, Oklahoma. My musician friends, so I didn't know them personally, but they were like the stuff of legends, where my drummer would say, man, White Cowbell, Oklahoma is coming to play Barrymore's, which is like a legendary venue that U2 and John Mayer and all these guys played at. They're coming to town. So I would hear of this legendary band, White Cowbell, coming to Ottawa long before you were their drummer. And I remember when you and I were jamming, at one, like, you're the nicest guy ever. And at one point you're like, hey Joel, like I just have to let you know something. Like I auditioned for this band White Cowbell. I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. You're like, if I get the gig, I probably won't get it, but if I get the gig, I don't know how much I'll be able to jam with you. I'm like, dude, go for it. Like those guys are legends, and you ended up getting the gig and touring
Yeah.
Europe and all that. So shout out to White Cowbell.
Yeah, and that's another example of a band that has some epic stage show, like all these cool moments, and there's chainsaws and things on fire, and the band is a killer band, and everyone is just doing something in high energy. It's so yeah.
Do you think that actually influenced you guys as well, like the live show to push yourselves?
Sure, yeah.
Oh yeah, I'd say there's some elements of there just being like, okay, this guy's like got a chainsaw.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the chainsaw at the Dreamboats show.
Shit into the audience. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, this guy's they know what they're doing, So it's having a couple good shticks and knowing how to like just get people talking, and that's what we're trying to do as well, So, and we definitely took a lot of elements, inspiration from that band.
Yeah.
I myself personally, obviously, naturally with Johnny, who's in the band, but like just being that guy like on the outside, but also being like, oh my gosh, I got to play drums. I want my drummer back. You know what I mean? And what? But they're always something so positive. I'd look at in my life for sure.